The marble floor of Arden Bank's boardroom was cold beneath my heels. I stood before 12 directors, my parents flanking me like executioners. My father slid the document across the polished table. "Sign it, Ivy," he said. His voice carried no warmth. My mother would not look at me. Behind them, my brother Caleb leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smirking. The document stripped me of my inheritance, my position, everything. Cameras flashed from the corner, where the corporate photographer documented my humiliation. My hand trembled as I signed my name. The room erupted in polite applause. I looked up at my father's face and saw nothing but satisfaction. In that moment, something inside me died. Something else was born. I slipped the USB drive from the table into my pocket while they celebrated. Nobody noticed. They never noticed me. Security escorted me through the lobby. Every employee looked away. I had worked here for 3 years, discovered financial leaks that saved millions. Caleb took credit for it all. The glass doors closed behind me with a sound like a coffin lid. In the parking lot, my mother appeared beside my car. "You were never meant to lead," she whispered. Her perfume was expensive. Her words were poison. I sat in my car and cried until my throat burned. Then I looked down at my hand. The flash drive felt heavy. I had downloaded everything before the meeting. Every email, every falsified report, every lie Caleb told. They thought they were erasing me. I was just getting started. My name is Ivy Royce, 26 years old, former financial analyst at Arden Bank, daughter of Victor and Helena Royce, sister to Caleb, the golden boy who could do no wrong. That was the day my family made their most expensive mistake. I had spent my childhood trying to earn their approval. Perfect grades, early acceptance to Wharton, top of my class. I joined the family bank at 23. Found irregularities in offshore accounts within 6 months. Traced them to internal fraud. Caleb presented my findings as his own. My parents believed him. They always believed him. I checked my phone. My bank account showed 0. They had frozen everything. My credit cards declined. The apartment lease was in their name. I was cut off completely. I had nothing. Nothing except the truth. The electricity in my apartment died that evening. I sat in the dark, laptop glowing. The landlord knocked. "Your lease is terminated. You have 24 hours. He would not meet my eyes. Outside my window, the city blazed with lights. Inside, I was invisible. My phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. "Should have stayed in your place, little sister." Rage replaced the grief. I opened my laptop and accessed the backup files I had hidden months ago. Folder after folder of evidence. Bank correspondence. Audit trails. The camera on my desk caught my reflection. My tear-streaked face hardened into something new. Something dangerous. I created a new folder and labeled it simply, Receipts. I spent that night reading every file. Caleb had not just stolen my work. He had falsified data to cover embezzlement. Small amounts at first, then millions. My parents knew. They protected him. I found emails between my father and the compliance officer. "Handle this internally. The Royce name cannot be tarnished." I sent everything to the bank's fraud department. Within an hour, I received an automated response. Report dismissed by upper management. My hands shook. The system was rigged. My phone rang. "Caleb, you really thought they would pick you over blood?" His laugh echoed in my empty apartment. "Father says you are finished. Mother agrees. Stay away from the bank, Ivy. This is your only warning." I hung up. He was right about one thing. I was finished being their victim. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. My car was repossessed. I took a train north to a small coastal town I had visited once as a child. The journey took 6 hours. I stared out the window at the darkness rushing past. In the reflection, I saw a different person. Someone stripped of everything except determination. At the station, I found a motel. $40 a night. I had $200 in cash. That gave me 5 days to find work. Before sleeping, I stopped at a bank, rented a safety deposit box. Place the flash drive inside with a handwritten note. You will need this someday. The clerk asked if I was okay. I smiled. I will be. The Blue Water Diner hired me the next morning. $6 an hour plus tips. I worked breakfast and lunch shifts. The owner, a woman named Francine, asked no questions. At night, I sat in the corner booth and wrote business plans on napkins. Investment strategies. Market analysis. Everything I had learned at Wharton and forgotten in my family's shadow. A regular customer watched me. Silver hair. Expensive watch. He ordered coffee and read the financial section. One evening, he slid into my booth. You read numbers like someone trained, he said. His name was Elias Varon, retired investment banker. He owned half the commercial property in town. I could use someone with your eye, he continued. I hesitated. Then I told him my first name only, not Royce. Never Royce again. Elias became my mentor. We met twice a week at his office, overlooking the harbor. He taught me things Wharton never covered. Shell companies. Proxy purchases. How to move money invisibly. The wealthy do not fight in public, he explained. They fight in boardrooms, and the loser never sees it coming. I absorbed everything. At the diner, I saved every dollar. At night, I traded penny stocks with my tips. Turned 200 into 2,000 in 3 months. Elias noticed. Who taught you to read markets like that? He asked. I smiled. Someone who underestimated me. The question lingered in his eyes. I never answered. Some secrets were weapons. I was learning which ones to keep. 6 months into my exile, I saw the news. Arden Bank expands under Caleb Royce. The television in the diner showed my brother cutting a ribbon. My parents stood behind him, beaming. The bank had opened 3 new branches. Stock prices climbed. Everything I had built was now his legacy. Francine touched my shoulder. You okay, honey? I nodded. But I was not okay. I was calculating. That night, I used my savings to buy 10 shares of Arden Bank stock. It was nothing. A grain of sand. But sand could become a beach. I opened a trading account under a business name. Orion Capital. It meant nothing. It meant everything. Elias noticed the fire in my eyes during our next meeting. What are you planning? He asked. I looked at the harbor. Something precise. I studied corporate takeovers for the next year. Read every case. Analyzed every strategy. Hostile acquisitions. Proxy battles. Shareholder revolts. Elias provided books his lawyer friends recommended. You are learning to wage war, he observed. I did not deny it. During the day, I served coffee. At night, I became someone else. Someone who understood that power was not inherited. It was taken. I learned about shadow companies. How to buy stock through layers of ownership. How to stay invisible while accumulating control. My parents taught me greed. Caleb taught me that family was conditional. The market taught me precision. I tripled my money in 8 months. Then doubled it again. Orion Capital grew from a name on paper to something real. Elias offered to become my silent partner. I have capital, he said. You have vision. Together, we could do something significant. I agreed. We formed Orion Capital officially. Limited liability company. Delaware registration. Elias provided funding. I provided strategy. We started buying Arden Bank stock in small increments. Never more than 0.5% at a time. Spread across different holding companies. Different accounts. I refused all interviews. During investor calls, I used a voice modulator. Nobody knew who controlled Orion Capital. That was the point. My goal was simple. Acquire 10% of Arden Bank without anyone noticing. 10% was enough to demand a board seat. Enough to ask questions. Enough to make them see me again. Our first major purchase happened on a Tuesday. We bought 1% through a proxy firm in Nevada. The transaction appeared as routine market movement. That evening, I watched the financial news. The anchor mentioned Orion Capital briefly. New investor interest in Arden Bank. Nothing more. I imagined Caleb shrugging it off. But I knew better. I had worked in that building. 1% was enough to trigger internal review. 3 days later, Elias called. Your brother made inquiries. He wants to know who we are. My pulse quickened. This was the first piece falling. Let him wonder, I said. That night, I could not sleep. Somewhere in that marble boardroom, Caleb was asking questions. Somewhere, my name was becoming a ghost that haunted him. And he had no idea the ghost was real. My mother called 6 months later. I stared at the number. We had not spoken in 2 years. I let it ring twice before answering. Ivy, she said. Her voice carried false warmth. We miss you. Your father and I were hoping you might visit. I knew this game. Their stock had dropped 4% that quarter. Investors were nervous. I will think about it, I replied. She pushed. Please, darling. It has been too long. Family should not be divided like this. I agreed to meet at a restaurant in the city. Neutral ground. When I arrived, my mother wore pearls and desperation. She hugged me. In that embrace, I felt something slip into my coat pocket. Later, I found it. A recording device. They were gathering evidence, trying to paint me as unstable, as a threat. I smiled and left it running. The recording caught me asking about the fraud I had reported. My mother twisted the conversation, made it sound like threats. She leaked the audio to a financial blogger. The headline appeared the next morning. Disgraced daughter threatens family bank. The article painted me as vindictive, unstable, seeking revenge for being rightfully removed. Comments poured in. People who knew nothing called me entitled, bitter, a spoiled child who could not accept reality. I read every word, felt every cut. Then I closed my laptop. Elias called. We should respond. Set the record straight. I refused. No. They want spectacle. They want me to rage and scream. That proves their narrative. I learned something important that day. Silence was not weakness. Silence was strategy. While they celebrated their victory, I bought another 3%. We moved carefully. 3 shell companies. 5 proxy accounts. Every purchase looked unrelated. By month 18, Orient Capital controlled 9% of Arden Bank. We were the 3rd largest shareholder. Nobody connected the dots. Financial analysts mentioned us in reports. Anonymous investment group showing confidence in Arden's expansion. If they only knew. I worked double shifts at the diner. Saved everything. Lived in a studio apartment with second-hand furniture. People saw a waitress. I was building an empire from spare change and calculated risk. Elias marveled at my discipline. Most people in your position would have cracked, he said. I shook my head. Most people did not have their identity stolen. Pain teaches patience. I was not rushing. I was inevitable. A former assistant from Arden Bank reached out through LinkedIn. His name was Philip. He had worked in document processing. His message was brief. They forged your signature on several loans. I have proof. We met at a coffee shop in a different city. He was nervous. Kept looking over his shoulder. He handed me a thumb drive. Everything is here. Dates. Amounts. Your signature copied from old documents. I asked why he was helping me. Because it is wrong, he said. Because Caleb threatened to fire me when I questioned it. We parted ways. I was walking to my car when I heard shouting. I turned. 2 men grabbed Philip, dragged him into a black sedan. He screamed my name. The car sped away. I stood frozen. Then I ran. Philip died 3 days later. Car accident. Single vehicle collision. The news called it tragic. I called it murder. They were tying up loose ends, making sure their secrets stayed buried. I sat in my apartment and wept. Not just for Philip. For every line they crossed. Every life they ruined to protect the illusion. Elias found me there. This is bigger than revenge now, he said quietly. I agreed. I sent encrypted copies of Philip's files to 3 lawyers abroad. Journalists in countries where my father had no influence. Insurance, in case something happened to me. Then, I made a decision. We would not just expose them. We would take everything. I called our broker. Buy everything available, I said. I do not care about the price. We moved to phase 2. The takeover through collapse had begun.
Rumors started spreading.
Anonymous tips to financial regulators. Whispers about offshore accounts. Nothing concrete. Just enough to make investors nervous. Arden stock dipped 2%. Then 4%. My father appeared on television, confident and dismissive. Market fluctuations are normal. Arden Bank remained strong. But I saw the tension in his jaw. Caleb gave interviews defending their practices. He looked polished. Sounded rehearsed. I knew he was panicking. We sold small portions of our holdings. Triggered more concern. Then bought them back at lower prices. Each cycle increased our percentage. Increased their fear. By month 22, we controlled 13%. Elias was impressed. You are bleeding them slowly, he observed. I nodded. They bled me first. On the news, Caleb raged. Whoever is manipulating our stock will regret this. I whispered at the screen.
Yes.
You will. I sent anonymous evidence to regulators. Nothing major. Small inconsistencies in quarterly reports. Enough to trigger an audit. Federal auditors descended on Arden Bank. My parents held a press conference. My father's hands shook as he read his statement. We welcome this review. Arden Bank has nothing to hide. But his eyes betrayed him. My mother stood beside him. Pearls clutched tight. For the first time, I saw fear. Caleb tried to spin it.
Called it a routine examination.
Blamed competitors for spreading false rumors. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Employees were questioned. Documents subpoenaed. Every day, their stock dropped. Every day, I bought more. Elias asked if I felt guilty. I thought about Philip, about my empty apartment, about signing away my inheritance. No, I said. Now they know what helpless feels like. The emergency shareholder meeting was called for a Friday morning. Orion Capital received an invitation. We were now the largest outside investor. 15%. I wore a black suit and a silk scarf that covered my face. Tinted glasses. Voice modulator clipped to my collar. I sat in the back of the boardroom behind darkened glass. My parents sat at the head of the table. Caleb beside them. They looked smaller. My father cleared his throat. We appreciate Orion Capital's investment. However, recent market volatility requires decisive action. We are proposing a partial buyout of outside shares to consolidate control. Elias, sitting beside me, glanced my way. I activated the modulator. My voice came out distorted. Unrecognizable. Orion Capital proposes a counteroffer. Full acquisition of Arden Bank. We are prepared to buy controlling interest. Silence. Caleb stood. Absolutely not. The board voted.
6-5.
In Orion's favor. I walked to the front of the room, removed my scarf, took off the glasses, unplugged the voice modulator. The silence was absolute. My father's hand trembled against the table. My mother gasped, covered her mouth. Caleb stared at me like I was a ghost. It is you, he whispered. I met his eyes. You made me invisible. I just used it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I placed a folder on the table. Inside, you will find evidence of embezzlement. Falsified reports. The murder of Philip Stevens covered up as an accident. And proof that you forged my signature on 14 fraudulent loans. My father tried to stand. His legs failed him. I continued. I also have recordings of you authorizing the cover-up. Of Mother planting that device. Of Caleb threatening employees. Behind me, the door opened. Federal agents entered. My mother reached for me. Ivy, please. I stepped back. You taught me family was everything. Then you taught me family was conditional. I learned the lesson. My parents were arrested in that boardroom. Handcuffs clicked around my father's wrists. My mother sobbed. Caleb tried to run. 2 directors blocked his path. Security held him until the agents arrived. I watched it all from the corner. The same corner where the photographer had documented my humiliation. Now cameras flashed for them. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Royce, did you embezzle funds? Mrs. Royce, were you complicit? They were let out through the lobby. Every employee watched. The same employees who had looked away when I was escorted out. The marble floor echoed with their footsteps. I stood at the window and watched them loaded into separate vehicles. Felt nothing. No joy. No satisfaction. Just the cold certainty that balance had been restored. Elias approached. "How do you feel?" I looked at my reflection in the glass. Free. The board appointed me interim CEO. I walked into my father's office. His desk was mahogany. His chair was leather. His name was still on the door. I had it removed that afternoon. The first thing I did was rehire every employee Caleb had fired. People who questioned him. People who were loyal to truth. Then I addressed the bank's debt. Restructured. Refinanced. Cut executive salaries, including my own. By month 3, we were profitable again. I rebranded. Arden Bank became Royce Mutual. Not after my father. After the version of Royce that meant integrity. In my office, I found a photograph. My family at my graduation. We looked happy. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in a drawer. Some memories were better left locked away. That night, I called Francine at the diner. "I want to invest in your business," I said.
She cried.
Caleb was sentenced to 12 years. My father received 15. My mother, who cooperated with prosecutors, got 8. I did not attend their sentencing. I had already said everything I needed to say. The bank flourished. Under my leadership, we focused on small business loans, community investment, transparency in every transaction. Financial magazines called it a miraculous turnaround. Analysts praised the new direction. But I knew the truth. It was not a miracle. It was precision. It was patience. It was refusing to let them define me. Elias retired. We remained friends. He told me he was proud. "You could have destroyed them and walked away," he said. "Instead, you built something better." I thought about that. About revenge versus restoration. Revenge was watching them fall. Freedom was rising without needing to see it. I stood in the boardroom exactly 3 years after signing away my inheritance. Same marble floor. Same long table. But everything was different. Reporters waited outside. They wanted to know how it felt. To own the bank that had cut me off. To sit in the chair that once rejected me. I walked to the head of the table.
Sat down.
Adjusted the microphone. Someone asked the question I knew was coming. "How does it feel to own the bank that destroyed you?" I smiled. Thought about the girl in the empty apartment. About Philip. About every lesson learned in pain. "I do not own them," I said carefully. "I own the lesson." The cameras flashed. I looked straight into them. Behind me, the new sign was visible through the glass. Royce Mutual. My name gleaming above the doors. Not because I inherited it. Because I earned it. Fade out.